Although I run an ostensibly PC-focused channel here, more frequent viewers might have caught on to the fact that I have a big soft spot for PlayStation. And if you haven't caught on, I really like PlayStation exclusive games. Ever since Bloodborne in 2015, Sony have been consistently killing it with their second and first party output. Spider-Man, The Last of Us 2, Horizon Zero Dawn, and Demon's Souls Remake, just to name a few. I'm not always the biggest fan of what they put out, but it's undeniable that the vast majority of their output is pushing tech and production value with a level of polish that is not often seen in multi-platform releases. I was lucky enough to get a PS5 just days after its release, and perhaps unsurprisingly, I've been loving it. The 60 FPS patches for PS4 games have been a win for both game preservation and my personal enjoyment, and while the platform-exclusive releases thus far haven't had the most broad range appeal, they're right up my alley. However, the second half of 2021 has been a bit shaky for Sony. Earlier this year, we got Returnal and Ratchet, but E3 and Gamescom yielded nothing in terms of announcements other than director's cut editions of Ghost of Tsushima and Death Stranding, while at the same time, all three of the announced first-party PS5 games slipped into 2022, with a PlayStation blog post seemingly hinting that both GT7 and God of War would receive PS4 versions. This news, combined with Sony's more reserved, Apple-like approach to PR, has left many fans wondering what exactly is going on. Now, it's important to note that they have been and will continue to sell every PS5 they make off of PS4 momentum alone, but that can't sustain things forever, and with Xbox on the road to recovery, Sony does need to step up and make a case for the PS5. Doubly so now that the rest of 2021 is devoid of any platform exclusives other than Deathloop. And so we finally got this long-form PS5 showcase, and I think they did an alright job of standing their ground. There's definitely some strong stuff here, and as always, I'm going to break it down and hopefully provide some entertaining insight. I'm not going to waste any time talking about that Borderlands spin-off or trailer number 55 for Ghostwire, so let's tackle the first big announcement. A Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake. Now, it's just a title reveal with a CG Darth Revan, so I'm not going to go too nuts with this, but it's a huge announcement and it's an interesting move for Sony to make. It appears that EA and BioWare have absolutely no involvement with this, which is a good thing if you ask me, and despite Sony putting PlayStation branding all over this thing, it's apparently only a timed exclusive, but the length was not disclosed. Now, I do want to point out that Final Fantasy VII Remake was also billed as a timed exclusive, 1 year, and it still hasn't made an appearance on any other platform, so who knows how this will end up panning out. Apparently there's been murmurs about this project in the past few months, but I didn't hear about it, so it was a complete surprise to me, especially as a Sony-backed project. This is a game with no PlayStation heritage whatsoever. You can't even play it on a PlayStation console, yet it's appeared on basically everything else, even macOS 10. If you told me this was going to be exclusive to anything, I would have had no doubt that it would be Xbox, since that's the only console the original appeared on. I don't think this game needed Sony's backing to come to fruition, and given that it has literally no pre-existing association with the PlayStation brand, it shows how aggressive they're willing to be. But it's definitely a smart move. I may be wrong, but I don't think Sony has ever had a Western RPG as an exclusive in any capacity. And with Microsoft's ownership of Bethesda Game Studios and Obsidian making PlayStation's future Western RPG prospects look bleak, this is a nice counterpoint. In terms of the game itself, well, like I said, this is just a title reveal, but KOTOR definitely deserves a remake. If you ask me, it has not aged well from a gameplay and technical perspective, but in terms of world building, lore, and story, it's phenomenal. I'd like it if they kept the pure RPG aspects and made the combat straight up real-time action, but that's just my preference as someone who loves everything about traditional RPGs except for combat. Clearly, it's going to be quite some time before this comes out, but it's exciting and just a super interesting thing for Sony to do. I thought it would be a long time before we saw more of this game, considering that it didn't even have a real name when it was announced at last year's PS5 reveal event, but lo and behold, it's coming out in spring. If you're not familiar, this is a Square Enix published game by Luminous Productions, and the name hints at their origins. These are the guys that worked on Final Fantasy XV, the debut of the Luminous engine from which they derive their name. This is not a game that I'm particularly interested in playing, though it is a bit of an oddity. I say that because for a game made by people who worked on Final Fantasy, the flavor here is extremely Western, for better and for worse. The setting is a Western fantasy with medieval castles and costumes, and the characters, both in speech and appearance, are not Final Fantasy-esque in the slightest. I popped over to the Wikipedia page, and all the writers are non-Japanese, most notable among them being Amy Hennig, who was responsible for Uncharted 2, one of my favorite games. Despite that, the dialogue in this trailer stuck out as being particularly abysmal. It's that quirky, self-aware Marvel style of writing, done in the worst possible way with subpar voice performances. In terms of gameplay, it's more promising. Again, this is a big departure from Final Fantasy XV. It's all about high-speed movement and real-time action. This is probably not for me, but it looks well made from a technical perspective, and the big sweeping landscapes are every bit as impressive as what they did in 15. Much like everything else Square Enix these days, it's a timed PlayStation exclusive, allegedly for 2 years. After that investor slide deck unintentionally announced it, Uncharted 4 was officially confirmed to be coming to PC, but there's actually more to it. This is being billed as a collection and also includes the Lost Legacy spin-off, and it's coming to PS5 as well. I did a video talking about my thoughts on this a few months back, and as I said in that, I'm still shocked to see them go with a PlayStation crown jewel as their third PC release, but I'm definitely not complaining. It's going to be awesome to see a Naughty Dog game running with no hardware constraints. I like that it's simultaneously for PS5. Like I said in that video, if a game comes to PC, PlayStation players shouldn't be stuck with a non-upgraded version, though I'm not sure how I feel about this being a paid remaster for PS5. It's going to be a bad look coming off of Horizon Zero Dawn, a 2017 game just receiving a free 60 FPS patch. Nonetheless, it's coming early 2022 on both Steam and Epic Games Store for PC users. This is one that I didn't see coming, a Wolverine game by Insomniac. I don't know if there's something in the water over there, but the guys at Insomniac are busting their asses. Just in the past year, they released Ratchet & Clank, Spider-Man Miles Morales, and the PS5 version of Spider-Man 1, which was way more than just a simple FPS bump. Everything they've put out since Sunset Overdrive has been just top-notch, and with the rate they're putting these games out, I think Sony got a lot for their $229 million. Much like KOTOR, they didn't show much, this is just a title reveal, but I got the impression that this might be an M-rated game, which I think would be the right move. Obviously Sony has no issues with that, Insomniac did Resistance, so I guess Disney/Marvel would be the holdup in that regard, but this thing is a long way out. So after seeing that announcement, I thought, wow, Insomniac are killing it, but then later on in this presentation, they decided to one-up themselves and announce Spider-Man 2 with a 2023 release date. I guess that timing makes sense, but it just seems so early given how many projects they've been cooking up simultaneously. It's a super short teaser trailer, though it's definitely in-engine footage. Venom is shown outright, but the voiceover teases what I'm 100% sure is Kraven the Hunter, an iconic Spider-Man villain that hasn't really left the comic book world in an impactful way just yet. It also looks like Electro may be making a return. We briefly see some yellow lightning, as opposed to the blue that we see from Miles. The first game was chock full of villains, so I don't see why this one wouldn't be as well. It looks like we're going to get that Miles and Peter double team dynamic, which felt simultaneously fresh and kind of weird when it was happening in the beginning of Miles Morales. Maybe it'll factor into the gameplay, some kind of GTA 5 style hot swapping. Actually, what am I saying? That's why it's called Spider-Man 2, you get 2 of them. It's PS5 only, and after doing 1.5 Spider-Man games, they're surely comfortable with the framework, so I think we can expect to see more energy diverted to story, level design, crazy set pieces, and an overall larger scale. I'm excited to play both of these, and I think Insomniac are quickly cementing themselves as not only one of Sony's best, but just one of the best in the industry in terms of balancing output and quality, which is a rare thing to see these days. GT7. What is there to say? It looks fantastic. I got a little into GT Sport last summer, and I really liked the time I spent with it. I love cars, but driving games don't really work for me most of the time. With GT Sport, something clicked, and I got more of that actual driving sensation. So GT has gone from something that I've pretty much ignored for years to something that I look forward to with great interest. GT6 was awkward and dead on arrival. It came out on PS3 after PS4 was released, and they had that whole debacle with the standard and premium cars, where the standard cars were just pulled from the PS2 games. GT Sport is a great game and did considerably better than 6, but there's an opportunity here to bring back GT in a big way and make it a tentpole title for the system. And with Forza Horizon being as big as it is for Xbox, Sony definitely needs that. It's coming in March, and there's also a PS4 version. If you've got a PlayStation and want a driving game, here you go, but beware, it's more of a car nerd simulator game. It's not like the Forza Horizon stuff. I have a rather complicated opinion on God of War 2018. As someone who played and loved the original God of War games, I really like the concept of 2018. Taking Kratos after he destroyed the Greek mythological realm and whisking him off to another is exactly what I fantasized about when I was a kid watching the credits roll in God of War 3. And the execution of that concept is even better than I could have imagined. The performances, especially Kratos, are top-notch, and the inner conflict of Kratos that wedges a divide between him and his son is compelling. This is one of those games where I go on YouTube and look up my favorite moments, and most of those moments are subtle, a word that is antithetical to the ethos of the previous titles, yet what they did works and respects what happened in those games. It's an incredible achievement, and in that regard, 2018 is a massive success. I like this slowed down and more introspective take on Kratos, but what I don't like is how that was also applied to gameplay. I replayed this game when the 60 FPS patch dropped, and I found myself totally captivated by every single cutscene, but sleepwalking through the combat encounters. The combat is slow, boring, and it's made even worse by comically limited enemy variety. God of War is known for its crazy boss encounters, which this game has some of, but the bulk of them are the same troll over and over again, just with different colors. I've never seen anyone else other than me complain about this, but the repetitiveness of this game's combat encounters drives me insane. There has never been a bigger disconnect for me between two components of a game. Anyway, everyone loves the game. I only love half of it, but we all want to see what happens next. This is the first time we've seen anything from this game, and it looks pretty identical to 2018, both in gameplay and visuals. There's definitely an increase in geometry, and the levels appear to be slightly larger, but this clearly has deep roots in the PS4 game. While this trailer was only 30 FPS, I think it's a safe assumption that a 60 FPS mode will be on offer for those playing on PS5. But I have to admit that I'm disappointed. 2018 pushed the PS4 right up to its breaking point, and while this does look better, it's nowhere near the jump in fidelity we're seeing between Horizon 1 and 2, a game that also has a PS4 version. It's the same story with the gameplay. You can grapple now, and it looks like there will be more mobility in general, which is a welcome inclusion, but this is the same stuff we got in 2018, love it or hate it. Once again, the story is where it's at for me with this game. Years have passed since the events of 2018. Atreus is noticeably much older, and the relationship between him and his father has never been more strained. We've gone from Atreus wanting his dad to be more loving to him wanting his dad to be a stone-cold killer again. Likewise, Kratos is trying to keep this kid from going supernova after spending most of the first game fearing that he wasn't strong enough to make it in the world. Whatever they have planned for this is going to be nothing short of epic. In the interview that took place after the presentation, they called this the end of the Norse series, so I guess they're not aiming for a full trilogy here. As a show on its own, this was solid enough. Does it make up for the fact that every big PlayStation game got pushed into 2022? I don't know, but it's revealing a similar gap in 2022. Horizon is February, GT is March, and while God of War doesn't have a specific date yet, I would assume it's also earlier in 2022 since it was originally a 2021 game as well. It's a great lineup, but unless I'm missing something, it leaves the second half of 2022 just as empty as the second half of 2021 panned out to be. I think they can get away with just Deathloop for this fall/holiday. Consoles are still unobtainable for even hardcore consumers, and those people still haven't played the slate of PS5 games and PS4 patches that are already out. Xbox has Halo and Forza coming out, but I played the Halo technical preview. You can watch my video if you're interested, and I don't think that game is going to light the world on fire. Forza Horizon looks great and is a fan favorite, but I don't see it as a paradigm shifter, especially when console availability is, again, so constrained. 2022, though? Starfield is coming out in November, and it's bad enough that PlayStation won't have it, but it seems they won't even have an exclusive to compete with it. Now, things can change. A lot of these games that are being announced in the past year seem like they're years out and then get dated way sooner than I would have expected. Just look at Forspoken. But if you're going to announce things like Wolverine and KOTOR that are surely years away, then I don't imagine you have stuff in your back pocket that's 2022 that you're saving. Maybe God of War will get pushed all the way out to fall, but it looks like that game is ready to go. As I said in my E3 video, Xbox is making moves in the right direction, but clearly PlayStation will remain dominant for the foreseeable future. These big PlayStation games are like events. They control the conversation in gaming in a way that Xbox exclusives haven't for a long time. Starfield will likely be the first game to give Xbox that moment again, and it's not ideal for Sony to let them soak up all that airtime completely uncontested. Realistically, Sony only has 2 studios, both second-party, that could have anything coming in late 2022. We know Kojima has been working on a horror game, I pray to God that it's somehow Silent Hills, and it's been heavily rumored that Bluepoint has been developing a second game alongside Demon's Souls. The latter seems more likely for a 2022 release, and the reveal of it would presumably come with the official announcement of their acquisition, which I was frankly expecting to happen at this event. As for what it is, well, everyone is convinced that it's a Metal Gear Solid remake. It could also be Bloodborne or something else entirely. I hate to sound like a petulant child because this was a decent showing, but something just feels missing from the current lineup. Maybe it's the lack of any mythical project being announced. Maybe it's the lack of Bloodborne. Maybe it's the gutting of Japan's studio and the absence of niche projects like Gravity Rush. Regardless, it's nice to finally see some new PS5 games, and I look forward to going hands-on with them. If you liked the video, likes are appreciated. If you want to see more, subscriptions are even better. Feel free to voice your thoughts on the showcase in the comments, and until next time, Thanks for watching.